What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to bring you guys my full review of Death Stranding 2. I beat it last night. What an adventure. What a journey. Got a lot to say about it, and what I want to kind of start off by saying is just how special it is. You know, I do have gripes with it. I do think the first game in some ways is actually better than it, and that might be, controversial to the larger internet, but I want to stress that when this game is going, okay, and a lot of the smaller things as well are super good, and we'll talk about those, but when the game hits, it's something truly like special, and I don't want it to ever take that away from the game. While I think the story is a little bit weaker than what I would have wanted it to be, this is a Hideo Kojima game, and I really think I should embrace that and say, you know what, when this man doesn't do this anymore, I'm going to wish I had this type of game every 3-4 years, no matter how messy it can be at times. I'm going to wish that I had it. Does that make sense? So, and hopefully that kind of just speaks to just the individuality, just how special of a game and how different of a game that this is, even though there'll be some problems in between. So let's go through just a bunch of the positives first, and then I'll address, the negatives gets into spoilers, and so we'll kind of just do it a little bit more broad. We won't go into super specifics. In terms of the positives, this is such like a welcoming game. I think this can get in the game's way sometimes because, especially early on, there is so much explanation of things that they already told you in the first game, and I get it. It's been 5.5 years, but at the same time, like I think a lot of people, actually not just me, I played the game for the first game like a month ago. You're seeing in charts and you're seeing in sales and you're seeing in players, like Kojima has even said, not everybody even played it when it first came out. So I just stress that to say, like, it hasn't really been 5.5 years to that many people. I think actually the majority, it's been less. So, they go through a lot of explanations, whatever, but the game is welcoming, because they do have the recap. So you can read up on it. They'll tell you themselves in cutscenes, and specifically, okay, the gameplay. And that is such a huge positive, I would say, with this game is, I beat the first game. I said I really don't think I would go for the platinum for that one. I know there's people that have played hundreds, if not thousands of hours into the first game, and I respect that. It has a feel to it with that journey that actually I don't really know if this game has. This game, for so much of it, everything is so close to each other that there's really not that much of a journey from point A to point B. Also, it's a whole lot easier to get from point A to point B, which again, I think can be welcoming and won't scare people off. And maybe that's why the game did it the way that it did it here, because, for the first 60-70% of the game, everything is so close, and you're really not going all that out of your way to get from location to location. Now, to be fair, one thing to stress is, of course, the visuals. I made an entire video just gushing about the visuals. The one thing this game, I think because it's smaller, a little bit more condensed in terms of that journey, it loses that, but one thing it gains is making you really, I think, honestly, because of the visuals, that is that feel. That is, you're on a mountain and you're going from point A to point B, and it might not be the longest trip of your life. It might not be as long as trips in Death Stranding 1, but it looks unbelievable. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the visuals again because I did a whole video, but the character models, and the character models are one thing. The performances are all fantastic, but it's really the environment, and it is a big deal. It is, I think, a big deal for a game like this where you're out in the wild and you're out, going from point A to point B. And when you go through all the elements of the snow and snowing and rainfall and, the fires that'll break out and the sandstorms, I mean, I don't want to diminish it because it's such an important part of this game is the look of it. And the look of, hey, you're going to be out there for hours upon hours going from point A to point B. You might as well make it the most visually appealing thing you can. And the game gets a 10 out of 10 in that. Now, the game towards the end makes you do the gigantic deliveries, which feels more like the majority of the first game, okay? Only for this game, it's just the last couple. You're going to be going like across the entire map multiple times, and it's like, for me, I didn't love that just because, like, again, I like the journey, and actually when I was in the middle of driving or towards the very end, I don't think I captured it. Towards the very end, you have to go like almost 4,500 meters or whatever it was. I drove about 3,000, and then I accidentally jumped off a snowy mountaintop, and I broke the vehicle. And because I couldn't see, because it was dark and it was snowing. And in that moment, I said, this is incredible. That's kind of just the feel of the game. And again, that's also kind of the point, right? Like, in the journey or while you're doing the journey, you realize how special it is. And it's something that I kind of almost forgot about as I was playing through the game, thinking back to the first game, thinking to this game. That is special. Again, like keeping a close eye on the terrain, doing it the way you want to do it. You don't have I drove so much of this game, but you don't have to. You could do zip lines, you could do the cannons that'll fire your deliveries kind of for you to a certain location. Like, you can do so much in this game, and a lot of it is built off the back of everybody helping each other, which is such an epic, amazing, feature that he has in this game and the last game. So, and I love that. Again, it's kind of like when you're doing it, you say, you know what, this is something truly special. I just think sometimes the pacing or the way they did it wasn't exactly how I would have. But I mean, like, again, when you're in it, you say, you know what, I kind of get it. The movement, there is something to shorter deliveries, right? Like not taking up, like, I remember in the first game, there's one that you have to go over like a mountain. I guess you don't have to go over it. I chose to. And it took me, I think, 45 minutes in real time to do it. Okay. And it was like, that's a long delivery. I literally felt like I worked for the UPS. Whereas in this game, some of the longer ones at the very end, yeah, that might actually take you 20 or so minutes. But again, it's up to you how you do it. There's so much you can craft and technically fabricate, it's called, right? So much you can fabricate in this game and create and handle things the way you want to handle them. I barely fought in this game, except, they pushed that on you in several more missions than they did in the first game. And I think the fighting is awesome. I mean, I've seen people do like drop kicks and martial arts stuff with Sam, but I just love the shooting. I think the bosses are incredible in this game, and they're very dynamic, they're very big, but they're just awesome. And it feels like, it's hard to like put into words, it feels like Metal Gear. It definitely does, but it feels less rigid. There's a little bit of it. There's times when you'll have a weapon and it'll run out of ammo, and like pressing right on the D-pad to like equip, unequip, or holding it to pull up the wheel. When you're in the middle of fighting, it's very finicky, and it doesn't work like this very snappy, action-y game that you might see somewhere else, right? But then you think, okay, well, that's not exactly what this game is. That's just sometimes where it gets in its own way, but the game feels great. Like, it felt so good to shoot, and I stress that because, like, if you played the first game, and I think many people did, right, you'll know that game is tough. That game doesn't even really want you to fight all that much, and that's a good thing. I almost didn't fight at all in the first game, except literally when they made me, and then this game I went a little bit more on my way. I would try to do stealth, and then I would get caught, and then I would have to fight my way out of it. There's even a point at the very end, I think I can say without spoilers, like, you have to cross a bridge, and there are so many ghost mech enemies that are pretty tough. I killed the first wave myself. There was a second wave, and I snuck around, and I actually used a ladder to climb up the bridge, like on the side. I felt like a freaking genius, but it's like, because I kind of did both, right? I did the brute force method, and then I did the sneaking method, and I felt great both times, and I did it like 5 minutes apart. So I think that kind of just stresses the, choose your own adventure, handle it the kind of way you want to handle it. So look, I mean, it's still a specific game. Let me stress that too. Like, if you're not into, it's easier. You don't go as far. Again, like the first 60-70%, I think they hold your hand much more than they did in the first game. And that's fine, I think, for a lot of newcomers. But at the same time, like, if you're not into just like letting go and going out and kind of doing whatever, I mean, you have objectives, you have a lot of objectives, but how you get from point A to point B, what you craft or fabricate in the world, what you use of other people's creations, that's literally entirely up to you. And it's the system that you kind of just learn and embrace as the game goes, that again is totally unique, totally insanely special. And again, that's where it's like finding a vehicle like parked at the perfect location where I really needed a vehicle and somebody just left it there for me is like that a godsend. You know what I mean? It's something that how often do you get that in other games? In fact, you really can't, right? So, that kind of feel to the game as well, or that whole angle to the game, right? You create stuff and you help others. They create stuff that helps you. You can leave deliveries for other people. I mean, it's I don't want to explain like every aspect of the game, but those are just such neat and amazing features that, start in the first game. They haven't really been like updated. In fact, so many of the creations are the exact same. Really, where the new stuff comes in is what you can make for yourself. All the new weaponry, and there's a lot of it. I mean, the action is more here, so they want you to do it a little bit more, and they're giving you triple the amount of guns and triple the amount of grenades and all this stuff. And honestly, I barely used them. To be honest, I used the same 3 to 4 guns. I don't think I threw more than one grenade or one type of grenade my entire playthrough. But again, it's how you handle it. I could have gone the other side of things, right? Instead, I did it this way. So I'd say a lot of that stuff is positives and just a lot of fun. I did have fun. I think this game is a blast, and it is more welcoming in the gameplay department. When it comes to the story and characters, this is where it did get disappointing. Now, I will say, okay, and you can't spoil this stuff. The last couple hours is unreal. And I say unreal quite a bit, I guess, in videos, but I'm genuine here, okay? It is incredible. And I honestly would say it almost saved the story, the last couple hours. And again, that's where I realized, like, I'm going to miss this, in 20 years. Hideo Kojima is like, 61? When he's in his 80s and 90s, and I don't believe making games anymore, maybe he is, maybe he's not, we're going to miss this. I'm going to miss this. And I can tell you that from the bottom of my heart. Again, how we got there, I think, was a whole lot more messy. I think this game spent a lot of time retreading literally explanations of the first game. Did not like that. And the characters, there are some incredible characters here, but they wait. I think there's some good ones throughout. I actually think Sam is a very good character throughout, whereas the first game took him a while to get there. Fragile is a great character. Higgs literally steals every single scene he's in this game. He's not in it as much as I thought he'd be in it, though, so that's one thing. I would say, the new characters, Rainy's pretty good, but she has moments. She's not in a lot of it, but when she has her moments, she's really good. Tomorrow has her moments, but she's not in, 80% of the game. The one thing I'll actually say, maybe this is controversial, so I would take Deadman over Tarman 12 out of 10 times. And I say that on purpose because I just think they needed that explanation person. And what they did is they separated it from, it was Deadman in the first game, and I guess Die Hardman at times, right? It was those two. This time it's Charlie, who is okay, but I mean, really, I talked about this in my impressions video. You have so many of the same sayings, and it really doesn't stop. The DHV Magellan, they call it that maybe 80 times in the game. And it's just call it the ship. Let's go back to the ship. There'll be times in a scene where one character will say the name of the ship, DHV Magellan, and then the next line by the next character says it again. And it's just say the ship, or just say it once and don't say it a second time. There's some of that in this game. Or, when you get a call and they say, Sam, this is Tarman. I know your accent, George Miller. You don't have to say it 500 times, and he says it every time. So some of those things just get very annoying. And also, I just don't think he's as good of a character, specifically Tarman, not nearly as good, and a little bit more flat. I know, Hideo has, the connections to the Hollywood side, and I mean, George Miller, freaking phenomenal. He's made absolute classics. He's not bad, but he's definitely not, I would say, good, and he's not my favorite. He's got a couple moments, but I would take Deadman. I think Guillermo del Toro does such a freaking good job as Deadman. Dollman's pretty good and has his moments, but again, spaced out. I think a good amount of this game is carried by characters. When I say at times, I keep saying, well, this character's good at times. They all pop off almost at different times, and it makes the game feel better, right? Because you have, okay, Tarman has his moment in hour 15, and then Dollman has his hour in this hour, and then Sam, and then Fragile, and you keep bouncing back and forth, and suddenly you have a pretty good game, right? And that's the thing. I like the story. I think overall the story is good. The characters overall is good. It's an above average story and characters. I thought it would be just elite, and the characters at times can be. They're just not all the time. The story, to me, it just felt so repetitive from the first game. It did some things. It definitely did some things, and the payoffs I loved. Okay, like I said, the last 2 hours really, really, really helped this game out so much. Because it did, I would say 99% of what I wanted it to do in those last 2 hours, it did. Okay, so I would say overall, they elite. They nailed it at the very end. The rest of it, I just don't think it was really there all them. I think 90% of this game is character driven, and then the last 10% of the game is story driven. And it's I would have liked it to be different. I think in the first game it was different. The first game, game, I think, really put together the mystery and these dark kind of like what is going on, but also there's some complexity and you're kind of figuring it out as you go. And then they kind of like brace you and hit you with all of it at the very, very end. But they're kind of giving you hints throughout the whole thing, but it's not like beaten into your face. And I think in this game, it's a little bit different. I think this game, the way they tell you things is very direct, whereas in the first game they let you think about it then tell you. In this game they don't really do that as much. So I mean, as you can hear from me, like that, look, I take it very seriously. Like I really do. I think he's an amazing storyteller. I think he's got amazing ideas. This game though, I think just had issues of how you got there, but at the end of the day, like I keep saying, like when he nailed it, he nailed it. Like the characters, and there's just a feel, like when they're singing, and it's like, it's kind of cringy, but it's also kind of amazing at the same time. And it's like, I'm going to miss that. If that doesn't happen in a game ever again, it's like, it might be a little odd, like you have Norman Reedus just like starting to sing a song. It's like, I've never heard this before. It doesn't fully work, but it kind of works. And it's like, it's odd to even like describe it. But again, like in 20 years, like I'll want that again, you know what I mean? Or I'll miss never having that again. So, that's something that I'm trying to balance, like I think even when it's messy, even when it's not done, I think as well as it could have been, it's still special. It's still different. You don't really get this stuff anywhere else. It's not necessarily going to hit everybody. And then even someone like me who kind of expects it and kind of wants it, the way they did it was kind of all wacky and not, is definitely not the way they did in the first game. And again, I think the first game was better in the delivery of those things, but still special, still something that you're just not going to get in many other places. So to me, that was the very big weakness. I mean, I'm going to go over specifics in other videos. I'm going to do a ending explain, spoiler cast. Well, if you are asking questions like, well, what scenes do you mean, stuff like, we'll get there. Okay, we'll get there in other videos. But overall, an incredibly good game, a game that I did love, and I would say I love this game. In a lot of ways, it's better than the first game, and taking my biasness out, I think it's the more important ways, to be honest with you. Again, kind of separating, all right, well, I value the story and characters so highly in games like this, but maybe not everybody does, and that's okay. And most of this game is that exploration, it's that journey, it's the deliveries, it's the connection. And, this game has a lot of it. It does it, again, nicer and kind of more digestible than the last game. There's, it's also kind of like take it how you want to take it. Like you want to do everything, okay, go at it. Like I definitely did stuff. I did a lot of side stuff along with the main stuff, but there is a massive list of like sub orders, right? Going on your ring finger type thing. You go on that, you open it up. Oh my God. I mean, I could spend another 15, 20 hours in the game if I want, at least. And by the way, again, that goes also into the complexity of like, I know people have even like contacted me, right? And we've talked back and forth. There's people that spent hours building the highways, building the roads. And it's like, I took advantage of those roads and I put materials into them to help them. But I mean, there are people that literally went in and for days just built things, just did the monorails, just did the zip lines. And it's like, again, that's something that I recognize even with the first game. That's something so special. It's so specific. People can spend hundreds of hours in this game literally building the world for you. They literally can build everything, and then you can help them if you want. You could take advantage of it if you want. You could ignore it if you want, right? And it's like, that's all such an amazing aspect of this game that, again, you're not going to get anywhere. So it depends on who you are. Like, you want to go build 500 zip lines, go ahead. Like, you can do that. You'll help other people. You'll spend 5 times the amount of time that I spent in this game, right? Just doing that alone. And it's like, that's a whole element of the game. That's, I did it here and there, but I didn't do it much because I just kind of played it a little bit differently. And I think that is something very special about this game, is truly in that way, play it how you want to. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.